back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Since I have no more sports to talk about here, we're talking about all sorts of things with business leaders and people that I've come in contact with out in my real world and really Baltimore grassroots, love this place, into this place during this pandemic. We've done Arts Week around here for much of the week, and now we're getting more into business and leadership. Don Mueller is grabbing some university leaders for next week, also some of our friends in the health space and leadership, and of course from Hopkins and LifeBridge and throughout the marketplace here. But right now I want to talk to a guy I've gotten to know and watched his brand grow here. I've been in his offices recently. I'm holding up Royal Farms cups and other brands that we sort of intersect with. He has been the founder and, the CEO, president, principal. I don't know exactly what his thing is, but he creates stuff. And I came into my space probably about 12, 15 years ago, creating apps for phones and droids and all that good stuff. Mindgrub is stationed right where I put the mask and the gloves on and I do my grocery shopping right here in South Baltimore. Todd Marks has traveled the world and done all sorts of cool stuff and been a great coffee companion to me over the course of time. I want to welcome him for the very first time on. Before pandemics and when I had to stick to sports and stuff, I would call a guy like you and you'd say, hey man, why are you having me on? And in the middle of the pandemic where all of our lives are changed and you've done all these cool things for Baltimore and created these cool things for business owners, small business owners, I thought, you know what? Todd needs to serve the world here at Baltimore Positive. So I'm delighted to have you on, bro. How you been, man? You hanging in there?
Good, Nestor. Yeah, man. Doing well. I'm enjoying the time with my family.
You're not the only one who said that, and I think there is a timeout and a very unnatural but sort of natural pause that we've all been forced to take here and reassess everything. I've had financial friends on like Leonard Raskin from Raskin Global talking about, hey, this is a good time to be like figuring out your money if you haven't. And I've had friends on like Lou Weinkamp who says, maybe you got to figure out your wills now and your insurance and all these things because you have nothing but time, that if there's any disorganization, this is a period where you have nothing but time because the ball game's not on tonight, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, it's the commute time for me. I live in the county, work in the city, but it could be 20 minutes all the way to 45. But just to have an extra hour a day is phenomenal. We're doing sit-down breakfast, sit-down dinner. Lunch magically appears when I'm online. For 12, 16 hours a day now, because you can also work more when you don't have all that transition time. And only have to, shower and clean yourself up every 4 days, right?
Well, yeah, I went about a month without shaving, and I mean, if,
exactly.
We're Facebook friends, and I don't look as good as you with a beard, and I woke up and I started looking at the videos, and I'm looking at myself in the monitor, and I'm doing 20 hours a week of this, and I just said, you know what? It's not working for me. It feels too dark. It's already a dark time in life for a lot of folks. I spent 8 hours on the phone with Wells Fargo last week. I'm a small business owner, Todd. You know what I mean? So, and I've seen what you've tried to put together for people. And honestly, man, and I want to let you get into this for Mindgrub and what you do, because if I were to try to explain what you do and who you are, I feel like I know you a little bit. I see you around town. I know about web and creative development on the web, but I don't know exactly what you do in 2020. And I can only imagine in a Zoom world where we've all become Zoomy, I see these products that you're trying to put together to rally Baltimore energy a few months ago or rally small businesses together. So I want you to tell me, your audience, because I don't know enough about Mindgrub, even though I know a little bit. I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to explain what you do.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we're an agency and a consultancy. So Baltimore has a long history of advertising and PR and agencies, and that kind of progressed into really a digital market, doing digital and traditional marketing. Mindgrub actually started a little different than that. We started doing more enterprise website, web app development, mobile app development. We grew into being really the largest agency in downtown now, but then we're pivoting even more into being a consultancy, much like Deloitte or an Accenture. So we make enterprise apps and we do marketing. And we do, as you mentioned early on, have a lot of local clients, Royal Farms and Under Armour and BG&E and Exelon, and a lot of national clients as well. We've done a lot of work for Wendy's and Yamaha and Dell and, big brands. And we are headquartered in Baltimore and love it downtown, and it is our home. And we are also growing nationally. But as you mentioned, we try to do anything we can for Baltimore. I also chair the Maryland Technology Council. And one thing that did come up recently is the confusion around all the relief programs for a small business. So that was one of the rallying cries that came out of the Maryland Tech Council. We had a lot of help from Howard County Economic Development, accounting firms, law firms, Offit and CATS came on board. And we took all the information from the loan programs and relief programs and grant programs and made a wizard that allows a business to fill out a few quick questions and figure out what they can apply for. And we've got involved in a number of other ways for the coronavirus. And it's really what we can do to give back. Baltimore's our home. We love it. We see a lot of potential here in Baltimore. Our assets are phenomenal. And but we need help. We like every other city are going through a pandemic. But I see the positive, no pun intended, Nestor, but I see the positive that's going to come out of this because a lot of things digitally that might have taken years and years to happen happened in a matter of, weeks, days, and even hours in some instances. And so we're all going through a digital transformation now. That's the number one thing that we help with. But it's amazing to see all these companies now getting online and converting their business into really kind of a more modern, scalable, digital manner that it is today.
Todd, I've done nothing but talk to business owners since this thing, came down 5 weeks ago. And look, I've owned a small business here for 30 years. All I've ever done is try to grow my brand. I was the first one on Facebook because I owned a little AM radio station that you had to be in the car, in afternoon drive, somewhere on the Baltimore Beltway to get. I bought an FCC license back in the 90s and sort of a, terrestrial radio place. And man, the first time I could put my picture in someone's hand, I was blown away because I'm from the world where you had to buy billboards if you owned a radio station to advertise. So I was the first one to be on the tweeter thing to try to figure out what it was, and not really. MySpace, that was more of a younger thing. But when Facebook came decade and a half ago and mobile came, I saw sort of the death of newspapers and said, how are they going to compete? Because I came from that side of things. What I'm seeing here in the first 5 weeks of this pandemic in talking to people is this incredible push for anyone that's ever built a business, and however long their business has been there, they've survived something, whether it was 9/11 or the crash of '09 or something happened in their industry or in my industry, the media industry, where everything sort of gets blown up every 36 months as new technologies come online and there's new ways. I mean, look at what Zoom has become. Zoom has become a word that most of America didn't know at Christmas, right? And now at Easter, everyone knows, right? So not to mention coronavirus and, who Anthony Fauci is and all of these other characters that appear. But, through all of this, you talk about potential and you talk about assets for Baltimore and for what happens. And when I talk about business owners, first week that this happened, I had Greg Nally from Nally Fresh and said he'd always wanted to build a drive-through. and the virus just made it happen, so from Monday through Friday, he worked on a drive-through. By Friday, he had a drive-through so he could continue to serve his food if he couldn't open his doors, right? And that's the ingenuity of a guy that's already built 11, and I think it's forced all of us in the same way the internet did it to me 15 years ago, in the way that the world, you see the world that way as a mathematician and your background, that the world's going to change, and how can I see what's around the corner and down the lane a little bit? And I don't know that anyone saw this pandemic, but certainly seeing the other end of this, there is tremendous opportunity and there's tremendous ingenuity for all of us because it's going to change. Now, how are we going to meet it at the end of the road?
You got it. This is the biggest disruption in our lifetime. And even Mindgrub, I started in 2001, 2002, right after September 11th. I had a previous company. We went our separate ways. The market went soft. We didn't have the capital. We didn't have the experience. Went our separate ways. Started Mindgrub, but was an independent contractor. Then in 2008, Apple released the iPhone SDK, major disruption. Quit my job working for a Deloitte company, and I was in Chicago at the time. Held up in my basement, started making iPhone apps. And
that's when I met you. Right? I met you. You were above GL Shacks, right? Am I right?
You got it. And then we moved from my basement above GL Shacks, right? We had our meetings over pints. When we were in our basement, we went to Ellicott City Brewery, and then GL Shacks. You betcha. And,
I hope Pete gave you some tickets for something at Merriweather once in a while too. So.
Right. Yeah. And then we, so we've really grown since that time. But now is that kind of that third time of major disruption. You think of the companies that were grown out of 2008. If you look up the list, it was between 2008 and 2010. It was everything from like Pinterest to Instagram was up through 2010. And the list is ridiculous, the companies that were born during that time. Well, now is that time again where there's a lot of companies that are in basements, in garages, experiencing this disruption and trying to, combat that marketplace. I mean, I can't believe how everyone just suddenly went online with local services. We always ordered pizza, but now, between alcohol and prescription meds and, I'm surprised the drones aren't here dropping things off just yet. I expected give it a couple more weeks, and I bet you there'll be a couple more well-advertised drone deliveries. But
is that hard for you, being a guy that goes in and talks about something like that blows my mind, that I know you're not wrong about, like cars driving themselves, like watching the Jetsons when I'm a kid, and this thing was going to communicate with you know what I mean? Literally seeing things like that. You say that and we laugh, but you're not kidding, right? I mean, literally.
No, not at all. I mean, this stuff is like, as you mentioned, I'm a math guy, but I'm also a technologist, and I do say I'm a futurist. It's really just a matter of math. When you look at the convergence of biology and technology, and we were to, fast forward 50 years, and let's say we're fully converged so that they're splicing DNA and they're putting chips in babies that need it right away, right? Fully converged. Of course, there'll be those that don't have any technology and those that are technology dependent, but there'll be some convergence. We'll look back in 2020 and say this was one of the biggest evolutions of man in that convergence of biology and technology. As you said, everyone's Zooming now, and we still don't think about it as a convergence because it's a separate screen, but your hand's connected with the mouse, your audio's connected, you're visually connected, so there is this, multi-port connectivity. It's not a wire into the back of our retinal sockets or a wire into our eardrums just yet, but we're only inches away from that, literally speaking. So
you're frightening me,
Todd. It's amazing what's happening.
Well, I mean, people are a little frightened by that, right? Like when you say these things about, when I see virtual, right? I mean, I think every year when Las Vegas gets together at tech shows, the stuff really is sort of, it blows your mind. I mean, Todd, I remember, it feels like yesterday, I was in New York City the first time. A guy named Tom Richardson, you can look him up. He's a techie in the sports space, and it's about 2008. He had the first iPhone and held the app out and said, "There's a Starbucks 75 meters to the northwest of here if you're thirsty." And I'm 37 years old or whatever I was there, and it blew my mind. And I think about those sort of seminal moments where the first time the technology hits you to say, oh, yeah, it's possible to do that. And I think that's a hard sell for a guy like you coming in a room like that, right?
Yeah, well, a hard sell.
To get them to understand it, right?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean,
okay.
If you... Like, for instance, a couple of years ago, and we just dug this footage up, but I gave the keynote at the Association for Consultant Pharmacists, and I spoke about what the future would look like a couple of years away, and spoke about things like drone delivery, but I also spoke to telemedicine, right? How it just makes sense. I mean, we drive all over the place. We sit in a stupid waiting room. for those 5 minutes with the doc, for him to basically just do a quick, blood pressure check, look in your retina, see how you're doing, get you to cough, right? Like a pretty routine thing that you could mostly do digitally or remotely, but there's all that drive time. But what we didn't have is the disruption for telehealth and telemedicine to take place. But I bet you now you've talked to somebody, a doc here or there, or most of your listeners have. Telemedicine just took off overnight. I mean, even alcohol delivery wasn't exactly legal. I mean, Drizzly was starting to take off. I bet you everyone's had a case of wine dumped on their porch by now, right? Like, disruption causes what would normally be, more, kind of bureaucratic red tape to getting something done. It's that catalyst to make it happen really overnight. So, yeah, technology, I mean, it isn't a hard sell. People fundamentally get it, and they get it enough that when the world pivots, they're pretty quick to adapt, right? So I don't necessarily have to sell it. I just have to kind of paint the picture, and ultimately we adapt pretty well. Now, the unfortunate thing, though, is there is a digital divide that's happening, and that's what makes me concerned because I hear all these cries for computers and laptops, and I wrote an article in The Sun about the Internet that we don't have broadband in East and West Baltimore. So you think about my kids right now, I'm in the county, but they had to pop up and eat breakfast and get online at 8. Their first classes start, and they have synchronous online education. And but it's highly dependent on, I have 7 kids in this house. We have enough room.
Wow.
We have enough broadband. We have plenty of, devices. And between Baltimore County and half our kids go in Howard County, they're all online right now in classrooms. But think about East and West Baltimore. They don't have devices. They don't have broadband, right? Honestly, they're still working about, what is it, Maslow's laws, right? They're trying to get food right now, and they can walk to their school and get a brown bag breakfast and lunch, if you're a school-age kid right now, and that's their first order of business. Forget the laptop and getting online and learning. Right, and so that divide is really scary to me because it just got majorly exacerbated with those. And there'll be studies, longitudinal studies, where kids that during these 3 months, let's just say, of online education, or I guess we're March, April, May, June, 3 months will hit. But if it certainly carries into the fall, it's going to disrupt everything from the digital divide, the haves and the have-nots in the public school system, all the way up through colleges and higher education are getting majorly disrupted right now. It used to be, send your kid to, school in New York or a major city, and you'd be applying right now. But, the last thing I want to do is sign my kid up to go to, college in New York City right now. So, there's going to be a lot more of a local and an online aspect to education in general, and that was a major disruption and catalyst right now with COVID. So, there's tons of stuff being disrupted. The events industry is majorly disrupted. Of course, travel and hospitality majorly disrupted. It's super interesting. I'm fortunate that my tech company's done really well. We've always been kind of an online company despite having really nice headquarters in Baltimore. And we're rethinking even how we expand nationally and having more. We have a new brand called MindPub, which is it's an incubator for both food and tech. So there's a front of the house is a tech co-working space with kind of coffee shop bar feel, and the back of the house is a food incubator, which my wife runs and also runs another food incubator.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw it online and I drive by it once in a while. I'm like, what's Mark's doing over there on, in South Baltimore? This is we drive down Ford Avenue all the time, right? Yeah,
wait till our sign's out there. We're putting a sign. The designer wanted to have they gave me like a 12-foot sign or slightly bigger than 12 feet. I think there's a regulation, but the zoning board didn't meet right now, so a lot of things are
a lot of things
sitting,
are on hold. Yes.
But it's going to move again. So there was a restaurant there, and that restaurant was a little off Broadway, but amazing, kind of in the middle of the community, right there in Locust Point. It's on kind of like one of the major 4 corners with Jackson, where there's the deli and the liquor store. and then Larry's on the fourth corner. And we needed more space with Mindgrub, but we love cool space, so we saw the restaurant. And my wife is a co-owner of Share Kitchen, which is one of the predominant kind of ghost kitchen food incubators in Baltimore. And we both needed space, and we thought, what would be cooler than taking over a restaurant and turning it into kind of an R&D center? So the first floor in the front is a lounge and a bar, and it's all co-working. And then in the evenings and weekends, it's private, rental event space.
I want to incubate. I want to come and incubate. Can I do that in the front room?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have a couple more. The second floor is permanent desk if people want to pay a little bit of a premium. We have a single office / apartment on the third floor, which is really nice. And then there's a couple floors of kitchen space, too, in the back half of the building. But we're thinking, why not do this all over the nation? Because restaurants right now, they're totally getting disrupted. Like, think of that fine dining white tablecloth experience. They were the first one that were like, oh, my God, we don't even, do online takeout, right? And but those businesses that were takeout, curbside pickup, they just cranked that business up. They already had marketing automation. They already had their customer list. Those restaurants right now, some of them are actually doing more volume. Right?
That is true. I mean, the places that we know that are, and you can name, Echelon, the places that are set up and designed to take an online order, stop by, grab it, go, take it home. Those places are crushing it right now. There's no doubt about that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a digital divide. Even in an industry that we hear got rocked, no, there's a separation there.
One of the places that can make a pizza without a human being touching it too, right? Yeah, places that have non-touched food, that matters a lot moving forward. And I think that we're certainly seeing what's going on in Asia, right, in regard to everything that's being done there in the aftermath that is leading the way for what will have to happen here, right?
Well, absolutely. Even to the point of, packaging and shipping is going to be different. So you'll have if there's a line, product will get sealed in packaging and then put in a second outer layer, and you'll get that, and that outer layer is the one that you have to shed and dump and keep the innards, and then you can put that in your fridge and stuff. So even how we package stuff will get rethought through. In the age of the virus, right? Like, this happened, and it's unfortunate that it happened. But the thing is, as population increases, as we, continue to push into unknown waters, so to speak, there could be more of these, and with international travel and everything. So I think it did honestly kept us in check, right, on the speed of the kind of progress and evolution of man from a physical perspective. It put a check on that, but it absolutely just accelerated the digital growth of man. That's why being somebody that is in the digital space, is so interesting for us because, we've seen a lot of demand for what we're doing, and we're still hiring and, trying to get something going with the city so that they can post some of our jobs and onboard people because there is a boom right now in digital services. But at the same time, we see those companies that did very similar things to us, but their process was very physical and dependent on having, meeting space. And Mindgrub, even the way we set up our office, everybody had their workspace, and all conversations had to be done in a exterior conference room. And we had tons of these meeting conference room space, and it's just what we thought was good for noise disruption. But it turns out we didn't miss a beat because everyone just has their personal workspace at home. And then those meeting rooms were already assigned Zoom rooms. We already had Slack. We already had everything else. And we just literally did not need to meet physically as a company anymore. And it's been great. It's been awesome. We have online yoga and athletics, our beer club right now. They're playing trivia. I like to tell people that we're kind of like a college campus where we run programming for our team members. And that programming just had to adapt, and they went online as well. So we're having a good old time just all being remote and didn't miss a beat. And I think, in the future for Mindgrub, we're going to just keep scaling and do it more as a virtual company, continue to have our headquarters here in Baltimore. But as we get pockets of employees in other areas, and we have some in New Orleans and Texas now, but some of those pockets will also get some Mind Pubs out there so they can have meeting space, but otherwise not need that kind of big box, kind of office that we had been doing up until now. Not necessarily Mindgrub, but, the world. So it's a very interesting time, needless to say.
Todd Marks, CEO and founder of Mindgrub, a real Baltimore positive guy. He's calm, he's local, still getting it done around here. You can find all that they do out at Mindgrub. And next time I have you on, we're going to talk Share Kitchen. We'll talk about all these other things going on. But a couple of little pointers I want to circle back with you. Disruption, obviously, the disruption of every industry, literally the disruption of the planet at this point, in a way that I guess only a volcano or a meteor would be the next thing, or a tidal wave taking out a continent. But the potential and the assets that you talked about for
aliens.
Baltimore. What's that?
Aliens.
Okay, that's the other thing. I didn't think about the little green monsters coming from Mars, but whatever Orwell didn't figure out, I'm sure we'll figure out along the way here. But you mentioned disruption. You talk about the potential and the assets. Clearly, you're Baltimore positive, as I'm wearing it everywhere here, and you wear it. Give me the long view on how a nice guy like you from Howard County and Centennial and making your way to Hopkins from Catonsville said, yeah, I'm going to do South Baltimore, and we're going to have a worldwide company, because that was your goal, much like Kevin Plank, to have a worldwide company. There's a lot of people thinking about worldwide companies down in Port Covington, and I've had Mark Weller as a long guest here talking about technology and talking about cybersecurity in the neighborhood that you're in, all the things that you're doing. Give me a long view, positive look on, we get a good mayor. We obviously have all of these assets in regionally with rail and flight and port and all of these things with, the seas this way and the mountains are that way in D.C. and all of these physical things that Baltimore's always had. But how do we take this disruptive period and we come out of this 10 years from now that Baltimore is a big winner in the aftermath? How do we navigate that from the place of The Wire and all of these things, and a mayor going to prison that made me create Baltimore positive over the next 5 or 10 years? How can we make this a positive? You seem like a guy that would be on to that.
Yeah, so strong leadership. That's what you want to do. Anything right, you got to have really strong leadership. And as you said, we have the assets, and that's why we do like the South Baltimore area. It's right off 95. You think about Northern Virginia and the Reston toll roads. You look at the huge brands there because it's anchored by Dulles, right? Think of 95, 295 corridors, and 195 anchored by BWI. You have a major urban area with phenomenal schools between Hopkins, Loyola, University of Maryland, Towson, very, very strong school systems. It's affordable. There's a lot of affordability. You can actually get, at an affordable cost, you can get waterfront property. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
Dundalk
I'm sitting in it. I've been
Essex,
trying to sell it for 2 years.
Yeah, look out, Dundalk and Essex. Like, at some point, everyone's going to do the math, and that's going to be extremely desirable waterfront property that these Zers finally start, blocking east from the city. They'll go from Hopkins and Loyola over to, the shores of Essex, and that'll be the grandiose move. Baltimore has the marrow for just a phenomenal, town moving forward, a phenomenal city of the future. And we just need strong leadership that, unfortunately, we have our issues, from socioeconomic issues, which is derived from educational issues, transportation, workforce, health, you name it, the major pillars of what makes great community. We've been challenged in sections of Baltimore, and I think this kind of digitally and this disruption could really help to kind of level the playing field if people don't. There was a great article in, I think it was in the Atlantic, that got shared about, I want to say bamboozled. But what's the word of the day now? Like where somebody comes and kind of gives you a little bit of a smoke screen after the fact, and gaslit.
Gaslighting, yes, the gaslit
Gaslighting.
nation.
Yeah, there's this article by the Atlantic about how we're going to get gaslit by the brands. Be like, everything's great again. Buy your, and I don't want to throw anybody on the bus, but buy your shoes and your clothes and your purses and your fancy cars.
We're about to become overwhelmed with feel-good marketing, right? Like that.
Exactly.
This is going to be what you need to make you feel better after being cooped up at home, right?
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is with that, we will feel better. We'll be, placated a lot, and a lot of the lessons, that we could take out of this, I hopefully don't get lost. I mean, we have to realize there's a digital divide, and there are those students that are online learning right now. There are those students that are probably walking back from the local elementary school with their bag, breakfast, and lunch, right? And that, it got exacerbated, and that's really what we need to be focused on going out of this is, how to, now that it has been, heightened and increased, how do we level that playing field again? And that needs to be this next decade, right? If we just think, like big, hairy, audacious goals, you got your 10, 5, 3, and 1 year goals as a city, let's get a 10-year goal. And I know that's scary because it crosses a few campaigns, but a 10-year goal of leveling the playing field with the same sort of kind of, moxie and gumption that we need to get it done and put a plan in place that we can execute on for 10 years and get there. Because unfortunately, if we keep going the rate we are with, that divide that's happening, we are going to miss out on the opportunity to really become, a digital smart city of the future.
What would a digital smart city of the future look like? What does that look like?
Oh man, it looks it looks pretty hyper local, right? Like
who's got it the closest? Is there a place that is not perfect, but by 2020 standards, a place you would look at and say they're on the we should model Austin, Texas, or Seattle, or is there not a place for that?
Well, there's some pockets outside of Toronto, like Google and others, actually put together a city of the future, and it's a lot more work from home, not much cars. You're going to the local pub, and it's a lot more of that hyper local. No need to be bussed around and transported, and consuming coal energy nearly as much. So it's a lot of electronic energy, windmill, solar, green, right, low carbon footprint, right? So that there's pockets of it that's kind of like, what we need? We need that next Rouse. Or now, look at, Rouse 2, which, obviously the history of like Baltimore and Columbia is Rouse was one of the first urban planners and made a great community. Actually,
well, you are a product of that, right, Todd? I mean, that was a farm you were on before, right? Literally.
Yeah, you got it. So it's amazing how he got everybody playing together. I had a dinner that was, minorities and women and gay and straight, and we were just laughing it up. And we're like, why are we all getting along so well? And we found out that we were all Howard County grads. And so from a societal perspective, he put it together. From the way communities are with a village center, he put it together. But he was an urban planner. It was very physical infrastructure. It's now that digital infrastructure that's going to pull communities together. So the same way they have, an athletic facility, I think they call them Columbia gyms or something. That athletic facility now should be taking their entire user base and doing online programming and keeping that same community together. And so that's the thing that any community that has a really good sense of, maybe it's a great chamber, maybe it's a village center, maybe it's an organization like Rouse or now Howard Hughes, which is that Rouse 2 I was thinking of before. The way they're starting to pull things together physically, builders and developers are the ones that, frankly, they've been a little behind. They're going to now need to start embracing the digital and really being the same way that you run, water and electric lines. You're going to have to run your kind of digital infrastructure, which isn't just running, Cat 5 or fiber or, now, 5G, it's going to actually be setting up community managers and keeping everybody together in the community. And so where we are in Mindgrub, actually, Mark Saperstein is doing a pretty good job physically. We have, ball fields and restaurants and bars and great housing and pools and tech, and it's all in one little place, kind of that live, work, play. But we bust in a lot of the tech workers, right? So, and a lot of my employees actually do live right there in McHenry Row or in Anthem House, but there'll be more of that, right? We all.
But when you mention McHenry Row and Anthem House, that is a lifestyle living straight up and down in a tube like what I live next door to downtown. That the whole goal is to not move around the whole lot, right? In that way,
it's all, you're right there. And Locust Point is actually a really good example of, it's very kind of a residential feel, but there's a ton of companies in there, and you can kind of just live on the point, and you don't have to be, going over to, downtown every day or up to New York every day. I did that commute for a while. Living here in Baltimore, I went up to New York and Chicago every day. For a while, would stay Monday through Thursday, but that kind of seems, kind of a little ludicrous now, considering that we've all been working from home 100% of the time. So there's got to be a really compelling reason for me to get some FaceTime with you now. So, it just added a level of efficiency, not having to travel. Although,
or if you just want Marriott points, right? Literally, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm very happy for the Marriott points I do have, and the Amtrak is highly efficient to get work done. But man, what we can get done not having to bust ourselves all over the place. Although, certainly we'll have to come up with other ways to stay fit. Otherwise we'll become. I think it was WALL-E, right? Was it WALL-E where the humans were just like a blob on a chair that floated around?
Well, I think that was it. You mentioned commute time. My wife's been an engineer with Verizon for almost 3 decades, and she's almost died twice in 14 and 15. And through that period of time, her company went from having a location a block and a half from where we live at the corner of Light and Pratt, right? That it went away. It went up to Hunt Valley. That land was then purchased by McCormick, and they were thrown out of there during her second cancer battle. And when she survived the second time, she started working from home in 2000. Early 16, maybe late into 2016, she started working again. She's been working from home for 4 years. And when I thought about her life from walking 2 blocks the first 5 years of our marriage to do her job, where she could come home and make a sandwich, she got exercise involved, Harbor Place was more beaming 15 years ago to get a slice of pizza or get lunch or grab a crab cake, whatever you would do, to then getting in the car, getting made up, having to do all of that, take the car to Hunt Valley, and then get home. It changed her day from, an 8-hour work day to more like a 12-hour day by the time you start with shower, makeup, feed the cat, get out the door, fight the cold, get get your car stripped of the snow that might be on it, drive the freeway. All of that always felt very wasteful for me, but I saw it very much with my wife and how much it made her quality of life better. And I think whatever the quality of life of your kids climbing on your lap or the dog barking or your Wi-Fi going down, which still happens, right? That there's a point here over the last month or two, certainly not for restaurant workers and people that have lost their careers or waiting on $1,200 checks or PPPs like I am with Wells Fargo. Help anyone out there. But I would say for anyone that has been working from home in their pajamas, and full disclosure, I have sweatpants. I've moved. I dressed up for you, Todd. But I would say
I got full on jeans, actually. Believe it or not, I think I'm over the hump where I'm starting to dress up again.
Todd, it's spring. I'm going to go capri soon. I got to be honest, break those puppies out while no one's watching, bring those back. But in the case of time and time management and the value of time, and to your point, the first thing you said to begin our conversation was, I love my family. I'm getting to spend some extra time with them right now that I wouldn't be for, there is a coming together that everyone will remember this time together for better or for worse, right? And using it wisely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it also happens to be that, I'm into my 40s now and Mindgrub's really grown. I remember the last 2 recessions, I was even working from home, but the amount of stress that I encountered. So to your earlier point, I know there's a lot of families out there that are hurting and domestic violence is on the rise. It happened to be the place that I'm at right now with my family, and being a little older and my kids are teenagers. We have not, in the last 4 weeks, we have not had a single meal out, no takeout. My wife happens to be a chef, of course, but we've been sitting down as a family and doing dinner and then picking an old 80s or 90s movie or playing a board game, and it feels like me growing up in the 80s or 90s.
All right, hold on. So what's the most fun you've had in the last – give me the family story right now. Let's go inside the Marks family. Give me the movie or the night that was the most fun you've had in the last month.
Oh, my gosh. We've watched some wild ones, but I think I really – well, I got a kick out of watching Jack Black and, when he was a school teacher and he had the House of Rock. My kids didn't like that one so much. We watched, of course, the Pretty in Pinks of the world, and some of the ones that are nostalgic to us, they don't necessarily like. But then they loved Tommy Boy. They thought Tommy Boy was pretty funny. So it just depends. It's hit or miss with the kids what they think is funny or not, which is really interesting when we kind of put around them. But the best part with the kids is we also have been doing some kind of adventures together. So we happen to have a home gym, and it just had been sitting idle. And we have really good walking trails and, hiking and biking and stuff. And because we're in the house now all the time, the major change is that we're now outside running through the woods, riding bikes, going on hikes, and then coming home at night, eating a dinner and being exhausted from physical play. And then watching a movie together. And it's exactly what we did as kids. Now, granted, everybody has their cell phone in their hand. But otherwise, I feel like we definitely kind of reset the values train as far as the sense of family right now. For those of us that, that are fortunate to have that. I mean, I do work all day, but my kids are running around, riding bikes and stuff. Now, unfortunately, school started Monday for my kids, and then Mickey's kids in Howard County. I think it officially started today, or they have some warm-up. So they're 9 to 5 going to be back in school, but it took the school system 2 or 3 weeks to kind of train the teachers and get ready for, I'm impressed, doing some synchronous online learning. I was assuming it was going to all be asynchronous, and the students would be assigned lessons and then have to do them on their own accord. So I'm really impressed that they're now doing some synchronous learning, and that's going to put a damper in the extreme play that's been happening around here. But I love seeing it. I love seeing us kind of go back.
It's like summer ending.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's been great just seeing them run around the woods and get outside and, be kids as opposed to just completely plugged in, despite them being even more plugged in now. It's at that physical level that they're being more active.
Well, I'm glad to be plugged in with you, Todd Marks. We've been plugged in since the days of GL Shack, CEO, founder of Mindgrub. You and I have 922 mutual connections. Imagine bringing those people together, all under one tent. I appreciate all that all your wisdom in regard to the future and disruption and where we are, and really more than anything, the potential assets of Baltimore. And I know no one's been more Baltimore positive than you. And for all the people out there that are bullish on Baltimore, that do see this 10-year opportunity, even to say we are a small physical space. We talk about wiring it. We talk about feeding people. We talk about getting transportation. It shouldn't be this hard, Todd, right? We're not talking about the city of Jacksonville that's 100 miles wide. We're talking about a city that you and I could get together right now and ride 20 minutes and be on the other side on a bike, right? Literally.
You got it. We just need strong leadership.
Well, I appreciate your time, and tell everybody how to find you in Mindgrub just at the end, because I gave you the elevator speech in the beginning. I want everybody to know the kinds of things you do so they can find you and find the work you guys are doing.
Yeah, so the main site's mindgrub.com, mindgrub.com. And if you're a small business owner, we did talk about that site we put together, the Relief Wizard. It's reliefwizard.net. Check that site out because it's, a dozen simple questions, and it'll tell you any grants, any programs that have come up as a result of the CARES Act from the federal government down through the state government. So I strongly encourage you to look at that too, because now's the time to fight, Nestor, and ride that wave. And if you can catch it, this disruption is going to get everybody to rethink how they do business, and there'll be some real winners out of this too. There'll be that next Instagram happening here today.
Hey, man, I appreciate the inspiration and the perspiration and no desperation because we're keeping calm here throughout all this. And I'll honk the horn. I'll be the guy with the gloves and the mask when I pick up my groceries as I come by Mindgrub, all right?
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
I got to get into your cafe, too. I'll honk the horn on Ford Avenue, too, all right?
Yeah, well, it'll be open eventually here. I think we'll get at least a little reprieve this summer that we can get out and move around, and hopefully we won't get a resurgence in the fall. But if we do, we got this.
I got you, man. We'll see you out on Zoom and hopefully around town sometime soon having a coffee and we can all get together again. Todd, appreciate it. Todd Marks, CEO, founder of Mindgrub, two-time Entrepreneur of the Year and a member of Baltimore Magazine's 40 Under 40. All this great stuff, Innovator of the Year, Futurist, as he said, and talking about drones delivering my pizza. My friends at Pizza John's would love to hear about that. I'm going to have a post office before it's all over with. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net. I've done sports for 3 decades here in the quiet time of the pandemic. I'm talking to all sorts of business leaders about how to make the world a better place. All inspired by my friend Bill Cole, who said, you should have some people on that aren't sports. And then the internet said, hey, stick to sports. Well, here I am. Keeping calm, staying local, and like the dude, abiding all things Baltimore positive.